We're ready. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I've got 2:15. This is the last presentation for this room. It's a whole whack of people, so I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, but they'll be speaking about the Alaska Food Co-op collaboration. If there's any folks online, with the exception of Amber, one of our presenters, if you could go ahead and please mute your microphones, there'll be an opportunity to unmute and ask questions. You can also enter questions into chat and go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Sure, I can start. Okay. Well, your slides are first.
Yeah. All right, well, welcome to our panel today, the Alaska Food Co-op collaboration.
Didn't people here on?
Oh, do I need to speak in?
It picks up
Okay,
really well.
Picks up, okay. My name is Joel Cladouhos, background in economic development, born and raised in Alaska, and I'm working to recognize the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So this project in particular is related to goal number 2, zero hunger, goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. And we are here in a hybrid room, so we've got 3 speakers today in person in Anchorage. Andrew Crow, Stauffer, and Amber Quesenberry is in Fairbanks. We had Hannah Green scheduled to be presenting from Sitka, the Sitka Food Co-op, but she could not make it due to a family emergency. So this all started back in spring of 2021 with the question, a virtual gathering of food co-ops to support community level goals. And the kind of the origination of that was building or creating a food co-op in Anchorage, and in talking with Andrew and learning more about the history of the Anchorage Food Co-op, and which we don't have one, but in learning about food co-ops, I discovered that there were 3 existing around the state in Fairbanks, Sitka, and Kodiak. And that it started basically an informal process to connect with the food co-ops around the state. And then Andrew Crow in the Alaska Cooperative Development Center offered the opportunity to make it a more formal network. There's a concept paper and some interviews and discussions around what could be created in this more formal collaborative network. And that really culminated about a year ago, and then launched the more formal structure that we have today, which is essentially monthly with the group to talk about so the monthly calls are, let's see, really just focused on kind of the updates of what's going well, what could be improved, and how we can work together. We started, maybe back to this slide, looking at the joint purchasing effort as a potential collaborative project, but that has since evolved into some smaller projects, like looking at shared bookkeeping and accounting. And that those projects and collaborations are still kind of taking shape, and we've got some people with some expertise like Mary Christensen that are helping to move those projects along. And the success back to this slide, is we keep meeting and we keep communicating and we keep the lines of communication open, which is essential to relationships needed to then build something bigger. You know, we have a bigger vision for this, but it has to start with this kind of small networking, you know, monthly rhythm of gathering virtually. But one example was when Sitka learned of the vendor markets happening in Kodiak and in Fairbanks. They each had their own version of it. Sitka then added that to their store in their kind of local food vendor market, or they call it the cottage food vendor, and they're, you know, added to learn, you know, what Fairbanks and Sitka and Kodiak apply to their stores. So that's one example of just the positive outcomes of this process. So we meet monthly. We have a sharing part of the agenda, usually some sort of content, like, you know, education around bookkeeping or pricing strategy, and then kind of a wrap up in terms of what's next. And this conference has actually been on the agenda quite a bit to plan for this conference. So these are the questions our panelists will be talking about today. How did your co-op come to be? What makes your co-op unique? How does your co-op support local foods? And what are the future opportunities for co-ops in Alaska? Or for food co-ops, I should say, in Alaska. And our speakers are Andrew Crow, the director of the Alaska Cooperative Development Center, Amber Quesenberry for the co-op market in Delhi, or Fairbanks Food Co-op. Rob Stoffer, the GM of Kodiak Harvest Food Co-op, and Hannah Green, board member for the Sitka Food Co-op, but is not able to be here today. So we'll try to fill in some information on behalf of Sitka. That I will turn it over to Andrew Crow.
I'm Andrew Crow. I work at University of Alaska Anchorage, and I manage the Co-op Development Center, which Joel's talking about. I've been doing this since 2007, and we get a grant from the USDA every year that helps support my position and gives us money to do things like that collaborative. Joel's been talking about it backwards. So I thought it would be useful just because I am a co-op freak, just to remind people kind of what co-ops are. Co-ops are businesses that are owned and managed by the people who use their services. Okay? They are businesses, and their businesses, they're different than other types of businesses because they adhere to the 7 co-op principles. Those principles have been established over 150 years. These are the international principles, but they also are reflected in kind of the laws and the regulations that co-ops operate under when they register as a business. So the principles are open membership. That means not that anyone can be a member, but that you're not having a gun held to your head to become a member. Democratic control, which means that typically one vote per member. Economic participation, which is the members are using the co-op, they are the primary clients of the co-op. That they have autonomy, they're not beholden to outside investors. They education and training, that there's cooperation between cooperatives, and that's kind of what this project has been, and that there's a care for community. So, you know, in the United States, there are over 200 food co-ops. They've kind of come up in 3 different ways. Initially, back in the 1930s, they were focused on lower priced food because of the Depression. Then there was a revival of food co-ops in the 70s with a focus on natural foods. And there is currently a third wave that one of the reasons for these waves is that because co-ops are owned by the people who are shopping at the co-op food stores, they are more responsive to what their members want. So, my mother is a co-op in New Hampshire. She's been talking about local food, local food, local food, local food. And they, because she's a member of the co-op, she can talk to management of the co-op as an owner. And they, they have been involved in bringing local food into their store there since the 1980s. So the other thing that we do, aside from the connecting with these different waves of co-op development, one of the aspects of our work is that we try to tie the food co-ops in Alaska to different organizations, national organizations that support food co-ops and food co-ops in general. And that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you do it. So the Department of Agriculture, they actually have a lot of resources for co-op development. The Cooperation Works, it's a association or a co-op of co-op developers. The Food Co-op Initiative is a national organization just focused on helping start up new food co-ops. Columinate is a long established technical assistance provider for food co-ops. The National Cooperative Grocers is an association of food co-ops as a buying association. And then there are other groups like the Northwest Co-op Development Center, which is similar to our center, but they have a lot more experience dealing with a wider variety of food co-ops. We also have worked with different groups that have been looking at co-ops and food co-ops and specifically at ways that co-op address needs of smaller markets. If you know anything about food co-ops, they tend, the kind of classic food co-op is that it's in a university town, and it's well off, and with a population of over 20,000 people. And when we're looking at communities like Kodiak and Sitka, they don't fit that model. But there are a lot of other communities that also don't fit that model. And so you have things like the Great Scott is actually a co-op development center. It's a market that's been developed by a co-op development center in Illinois, looking at how co-ops can address the needs of smaller communities. And there, Great Scott is focused on local food. There's also our cooperative market was a study that was done out of Massachusetts. It was looking at how do you make a co-op market so that the food is more affordable for low-income communities. So we're tied into this group of co-op development specialists and organizations around the country, and we try to bring some of that expertise to Alaska. They're also very interested in Alaska because we are like the poster child of bringing food co-ops into smaller, more isolated communities. So how do co-ops support local food, or how do we work locally? One of the things that we've tried to do in the last 5 or 6 years is to create kind of a local ecosystem of the food co-ops in Alaska, the 3 food co-ops in Alaska, and have them work together using Principle 6. So that effort was culminated with these calls that Joe was talking about. We've tried to get the food co-ops to share their experiences and share some of the challenges that they're having, which helps us kind of identify what sort of expertise can we bring in. And it also, there's probably more benefit for the co-ops talking to each other and learning from what each other is doing. We just recently, we worked with a co-op development expert and she just put together this publication, which is Cooperation Among Co-ops Alaskan Style. She looked not only at what we're doing, but she looked at similar examples of rural co-ops working together. in the lower 48, in rural areas in the lower 48, but also in Canada, where there's a federation of Inuit owned co-ops in the Canadian Arctic. So what are some of the opportunities we see? Focus on the strengths that the food co-ops here have, which seems to be local food. The other is try to identify ways that we could consolidate services and save money on the kind of back office things that every business needs to have. Finding grants that will allow co-ops to develop some of those back office services and create more local food networks that will feed into the co-ops and strengthen their strength of local food. Share strategies on how they can lower costs and how to do marketing. One of the latest calls we had, Mary Christensen, who was the founding general manager of the Fairbanks Food Co-op, was talking about how do you set up holiday sales. And rather than have to figure that out yourself, you can provide some of that experience with that to generate additional revenue, and then thinking kind of beyond what's possible today, looking at models like the Arctic Co-ops in Canada, which is a multi-million-dollar federation of food co-ops. So those are some of the things that I see as kind of at arm's length from the Alaska Food Co-ops, things that we can be doing. So now we're going to talk about some of the specific food co-ops, and we've got Amber Quesenberry. Sorry, Amber.
That's okay. It happens all the time. The second one was correct. If somebody doesn't mind just doing the slides for me,
I will
would
run
be
the slides. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so just a brief history of our co-op in Fairbanks, Alaska, which is on the next slide, is that we're really a value-driven, locally owned store in interior Alaska. It began in the early 2000s. You could go to the next slide, Andrew. Thanks. But after years of planning, and so this really started with an individual, Dave Lacey, began dreaming up this idea of a food co-op in Alaska. The downtown area was really considered in Fairbanks a food desert, and sort of still is, even though we have a lot of food options and competitors in our area. Still, we're the closest store that most people could walk to or take the bus to. And so after years and years of planning, and I mean, I can't even imagine the dedication it must have taken and the strength of the fundraising and the people who really got behind this food co-op opening and are still very dedicated. The doors finally opened in 2013 after all the years of planning. We were the first retail food co-op in Alaska, and our main goal still to today is to contribute to our community's health, happiness, and prosperity. The co-op is a natural food cooperative grocery store that serves the Fairbanks community and the interior. So we do get people who come from hours of driving because they we have the dietary thing that they need in the store, or we have quite a few gluten-free options. And so the strength of our owners is still very strong. We have over 5,000 invested owners still today. And then on the next slide, our mission and values. So this is what I think really interests a lot of the owners and the employees who work there, myself included. I was just really drawn to the mission and values of the co-op. So I'll read our mission statement, which is something that we do during the start of every board meeting. And the co-op market, grocery, and deli, works for health and sustainability by providing healthful foods and products, promoting local suppliers, and offering consumer education in an open, community-centered environment through a viable business. Our values are service. So we're committed to serving our community by helping support and facilitate the needs in the community. Sustainability. So we seek to sustain our co-op's financial health, growth while working towards solutions to economic development that consider the health of our community and our planet. We sell probably about 60% of our products are eco-friendly. And then our sustainability. Our social responsibility. So we believe that our actions must benefit the global community at large, which means that we promote justice and equality in all of our relationships. Also, sorry, to become an owner of the co-op, it is a $200 lifetime ownership. I believe it's always started that way. It used to be where you could put $5 down back in 2013, but we've raised it to a $25 increment payments, but for a lifetime ownership, an owner would be eligible to vote in annual elections, run for a seat on the board of directors. We also have special sales and pricing on goods. We have like bulk sales and just a variety of other shopping perks for our owners. Next slide. So what makes us unique in Fairbanks, it wasn't always the case, but as of now, we are the only store selling bulk. So the community has responded really well to that. I get a lot of positive feedback that people say, we're so glad that you still have it as an option. The other thing that's unique is that we were the first food co-op in Alaska, and we just celebrated 10 years of business. And then we also make it a priority to at least have one community partnership a month, which would include like hosting events or having people come in store for educational spotlight. We have in-store demos like how to recycle your glass with glass grinding. We just recently did, it's Diabetes Awareness Month, so we partnered with TCC and they came in to, just kind of spread the word about diabetes awareness. We also collect donations for organizations that need it. We're getting involved with a partnership with the food bank, which we partner with a lot, but kind of like what they need, what they're in need of, and then we'll ask for the community to donate. Or the Children's Museum just recently needed kid Halloween costumes, so we'll partner with them, and we got great response with a lot of people dropping off Halloween costume donations. Next slide. We also do the Lend a Hand program, which helps support the nonprofits in our area. So 100% of the donations go to this organization. We're in the midst of right now collecting applications for 2024. And so nonprofits turn in their applications. We had probably about 50 extra applications this past year than the year before. So people really value this program. And so the customers have the opportunity to round their change up to the nearest dollar, and then that money gets donated. So we're collecting applications now, and then for the next 2 months, and then the owners actually vote on which nonprofit gets supported. And then we just choose the month that they would prefer for the change to be rounded up. So grand total of all the years that the co-op's been doing the Lend a Hand program, you can see the total there of nearly $260,000 has been donated back into the community. And again, that's really just the co-op facilitating, but the community is stepping up and rounding up to these nonprofits. Next slide. So one of the, I would say the number one thing that the community really appreciates about the co-op, and what we try to focus on, and also I think we could do better with in the future, is supporting local. So we source our local produce in the summertime from 22 different farmers and make it a top priority to buy local first. we get most of our beef, chicken, turkeys, as well as egg, milk, fish, and potatoes from farmers in Alaska. We also host a local love event, which is on the first Saturday of the month, and we do it October through April. So that way we don't compete with the farmers market in the summer, and it gives those vendors the opportunity to continue selling their product consistently. So at least they have one event that they can depend on during those off seasons. And so the vendors get to keep 100% of the profit. We just open up the space for them to use. And it's the co-op's way of supporting local vendors and help promote their small business. And then we also support local through our waste. So all unsellable food items are donated either to the local food bank or the Breadline Stone Soup, which is across the street from us. So we also utilize our calling of bad vegetables in produce and deli. And we have a compost program where several farmers will pick up the compost on a regular basis. Next. Some of the future opportunities, there were really too many to list because the opportunities are endless, but I really feel like it's all dependent on the community. So we're nothing without the support of our owners and our shoppers and our vendors. The co-op's future 100% depends on the continued support of the owners, shoppers, and vendors. So we strive to increase our Alaska vendors and producers and community partners, so that way we can remain viable to our community. And our goal is to be what our community needs while contributing to our local economy. I think that, there's a lot of question about being a full service grocery store and all of our competitors that we have here in Fairbanks, but we really have the opportunity to be whatever the community needs us to be. And so, yeah, we could go in a lot of different directions. And I believe that's it for my portion.
Thank you. I'll read this. I'm not staring at the screen. There we go. Good afternoon. I'm Rob Stauffer. I'm the project director of the Kodiak Harvest Food Co-op. I've been project director since early February. In some ways, it seems like just a couple months. In other ways, it seems like a lifetime ago. It's been a real fun summer. We really just got our brick and mortar store up and running, and just had our grander reopening. We kind of flung our doors open late last year, and now we decided we needed to celebrate that last week. So we're up and running. So the Kodiak Harvest Food in 2016, it's a member-based co-op. I have listed here the 644 members, but we are actually over 660 at this point. So it's been growing steadily. Kodiak itself is about 7,000 in the city proper, and maybe just under 12,000 in the entire metropolitan area, or actually the entire island. So it's a pretty small area. So we've captured a pretty good portion. So in 2016, the idea was formed, and then the co-op was formed following that, with the board being seated in early 2017. The goal is to develop into a full service grocery store within the community that helps support local producers and providers. From 2016 to 2021, this was kind of a slow get up and go as everyone learned about the co-ops. It's pop-up produce stands at various local events. We sourced Alaska grown produce from Arctic Harvest, and then just sold those at the events. That culminated in the summer of 2018 with we started doing weekly pop-up markets that are downtown in our downtown area, and it was a huge hit. People loved the fresh produce. It was so fun. I got to volunteer at some of those, and it was a blast. During that time, while we got weekly pop-up stands, buying canned sockeye salmon out of Larson Bay. So it's locally caught salmon. It's locally processed into the cans, and then we sold it or bought it in bulk, and then sold it by the can to just the local community. That's something that's continued to this day. We buy something like 13,000 cans at a time, and it's actually one of the things that we export. We're able to send some of our local product out into the world. So 2021, or actually, that is a typo there. 2020 we received the LFPP grant. Food hub for local farmers, fishermen, and cottage food producers. This really got things rolling. The co-op was able to actually hire staff, full-time staff, get the food hub up, local produce and locally produced foods out into the community, and that resulted in our brick and mortar. We signed a lease in 2021 for the building to begin holding those hosting the sorry, I stumble over my words here and slow down. Hosting our food hub and our box pickups. That store or that lease became our storefront. We slowly added to it over time. First, it started with a produce cooler where people who were coming in to buy boxes could buy additional produce, and then expanded into other local goods that were picked up from local producers. And then ultimately, we began to add to that in earnest this last year as we work towards that full service grocery store. So that happened late 2022 is when we were really recognized as being open as a small grocery. It was still pretty thin at that time. 2023 became the mad scramble as we brought in lots and lots of products. And this summer was the big culmination of that. We are now pretty much a full service. 5% of the hope for goods. And we'll continue to build on our what our local producers can provide or within around the state. But we kind of hit a milestone that you can go in, you can shop, you can pretty much buy all the things you need for your meals, for the week. What makes us unique? We bring together our local fishers, farmers, cottage food producers, and local artisans to provide our goods, combining that conventional grocery store with a produce box pickup, with a local market. We hold a market on Saturdays for our cottage food producers. They get to come in, engage directly with the community. It helps both of us, and traffic that comes to the store, we get the extra stuff for them. It's a community accessible shopping experience. We want our local community to be able to find those goods, and we want to be the place that they can come into and learn about it. Another thing, we're not really a health store. Our goal isn't things like supplements. It's not, specifically on health foods. But we curate what we bring in. We look at what we think is going to make people healthier. We think your food is what makes you healthy. If you eat healthy, you have a healthier life. And so we really look at what we bring in. It can be a little difficult sometimes, where finding a product that we have access to that meets, standards that we're looking at. And we try to go as much as we can with Whole Foods. And kind of like the Fairbanks co-op, we're going to move towards that. More bulk foods where people can buy Whole Foods in bulk and have access to it. Another component of that will be how to utilize it, because so many people, you go and you buy for what's easy and accessible at the store. You go to Safeway and you can buy a frozen burrito and you can throw it in the microwave. We'd like to help you build that burrito using local or regional meats and vegetables and put it all together yourself. So you are what you eat. Supporting local, actually one that is one of the things we consider local foods to be a higher quality standard. It's not perfect. It's not that our local farmers can produce organic foods, but we know that local farmer. We know what they're putting into their growing. We know their practices, and it's not traveling from across the globe. It doesn't have other gas. Get right quicker. So we feel that you're getting a healthier product by buying it from that local farmer. How we support local foods. In the summer, we have a pretty robust farmers market. Well, I should say it's a farmers market, but it's kind of an overall marketplace. There's a lot of artisans there as well as, but it does, our cottage food producers have a real good opportunity at that market. That's kind of the mainstay of their sales. In the winter, however, that comes to a close, and then we host them in our place to give them year-round sales, so they can have that supplemented income throughout the year and to build on what they're doing. Several of them are moving into their own commercial production. We've supported 2 different bakers, both of who are moving into commercial spaces. So that extra money that they've been able to do on the side is going to turn into their full-time gigs. Hired last resort. So when the farmers are done at the farmers market, they still have all that extra produce, we buy it. And that goes into our food boxes, goes into our coolers, helps them know that when they harvest for the weekend, they will have sales. That harvest is not going to go to waste. We purchase local seafood from our fishers, including the bulk canned salmon I talked about earlier, which we do export for sale, but also frozen seafood. We have several fishers that sell directly to us, and then we in turn sell to the community. It helps supplement their sales. Kodiak, about a third of the community can get out and get its own fish if you have a boat, so can't really compete with them. But the other 2/3, unless you have a buddy that can take you out, you really don't have access to all that abundant seafood. So we provide that. We have a local goat dairy, so we get goat cheese and goat skyr, and those are hugely popular. The feta cheese and the skyr, people love it. They also they used to do ice cream, and now they're edging back into it. So we're excited to actually have a locally produced ice cream that we'll be selling within the store. And we purchase local eggs. We can never buy enough local eggs. Their community is ravenous for local eggs. So we help support them by providing, buying in bulk so they have a known sale. But they also get great face-to-face within the community. So we're actually kind of competing to find more eggs. We help support them by taking our produce scraps and sharing with the egg producers. It's kind of how we gain them to sell to us, is that we give them extra food because feed is expensive. Future opportunities. Kodiak already has some hydroponic operations. It's been a key part of our year-round local sales, but it's expanding. There's more players into the market, which I think is great. It really reduces the amount of greens that will be imported into Kodiak and provide people with much fresher produce all year round. We want to support local egg and poultry producers. Like I said, everything that can be grown near us, we can know about. We can educate people about those practices. They get to learn about their food. Kodiak is very much a small island. You get to know all of your producers. The local eggs, people love them. They love the product that they're receiving. They can see the difference. Everyone talks about the egg they get from Safeway versus the egg they get from the local producer. And being the ones that can help provide that market to the community, so it's not just a farm stand. We get that, you can buy your eggs daily. We have some poultry producers who are starting up. They went through their first harvest. I think they were hoping for 250 birds, but with all the vagaries of the poultry, I think about 150 of them survived, but it was a hit. They had no problem selling those. We did host pop-up events at the marketplace so that they can come in and see customers, and they sold out like within a half hour. Yeah, it was great. So we're hoping they're going to do a couple more cycles this year, and we're hoping to become a key part of their sales. The other thing we want to do is provide a marketplace for our local farmers, fishers, and producers. Even if it's seasonal, we try to support them wherever we can. Fish year round, our hydroponics operations year round, and then our local farmers in summer, typically late summer for what we can get for them. And then we fill gaps in the local retail market and tourist markets. A Walmart, we have a Costco Light, which is kind of a local store that purchases through Costco, and we have a small health store. Even with those, obviously with the Walmart and Safeway, there's big gaps in what they provide. They have a lot of food, and they have a lot of cheap food, but they have a lot of crack food, and so we're trying to provide, like I said, that curated food that's a little bit healthier. Our health store is pretty small, and then the Costco, they sell in bulk. They're great for our community, but it just still leaves gaps, and we've got to fill those. Key thing is organic produce. We do import a significant portion of our produce from organically grown out of Oregon, and it's a hit within the community. And Safeway offerings of organic are pretty limited and pretty expensive, and so that really fills a big niche. And that's everything for us.
All right. So because Hannah and Carrie were unable to join us, I'm gonna talk about the Sitka Food Co-op's experience. Their vision is similar to the Fairbanks Co-op and Kodiak Harvest. It's to bring good food and community together. And they're working together to nourish community by focusing on value while providing healthy food and quality. So they started out as a buying club, and Kodiak has 2 grocery stores, a locally owned grocery store, C-Mart, and an AC store. And the group of people who founded the Sitka Food Co-op felt that they weren't getting the quality organic food that they wanted. And so they set up a wholesale account with a food distributor out of in Seattle, and they began to get orders and orders in the community, and then arrange for our shipment to Kodiak. They in the course of the first few years, they actually noticed a drop in prices at the two local grocery stores, increase in quality because they were faced with new competition. So what makes them unique is they just like Kodiak, they just opened a store this last year. Until that point, they were a pop-up store where they would, every 2 weeks when their shipments came in, they would go to a church basement or a community conference center, and they pop up, deliver orders to people. They had some extra when they had a good deal. They would buy on the co-op's account. They buy extra food and they'd sell that, and then they disappear in the afternoon and put all they had tables and computer and all that would disappear, and their extra food that would all disappear until the next 2 weeks. So this year they set up their store, and they as they say here, they have half their store now is empty. It's just to facilitate the delivery of goods, and then the other half of the store, they're trying to build kind of a community feel so that people will participate in the co-op. They have 2 employees. They're open 5 days a week. They use a lot of volunteer work because they still do the pop-up and sorting of the deliveries. They're buying in bulk. They're buying wholesale, and the co-op keeps track of what everyone has bought. So when they get their deliveries, the volunteers then sort everything out to boxes for each of the members. And then they have also developed relationships with certain vendors. So they have these pre-orders where like this month it's Seattle chocolates, and that allows members to have kind of a unique purchase. They got a direct from macadamia nut and pecan farmers, and so that the co-op actually buys directly from those farmers and gets a discounted or lower cost than they. So now they have a permanent location. That Sitka's been less focused on. If you look at the experience at Fairbanks and Kodiak, focus there has been on local foods. Sitka's been less focused on local foods and more focused on just getting natural foods. But now they have a local or a retail store. They're able to kind of focus a little bit more on the local items. They also have a local bakery that they work with. They work with they buy greens from group in Juneau that's doing sprouted greens, and now it looks like they're doing locally foraged mushrooms. So what are their opportunities? Well, more education about what a co-op can be, more than just a grocery store. That's focusing on those principles of community and education, and so they're now focusing on the idea of co-ops. This is something that it's pretty common in Alaska, where people might have heard the word co-op, but they don't understand exactly what it is. And it's adds either a level of confusion, or they're thinking it's some sort of communism, and it's not community focused. That's the end of our presentations. Time for questions if people have questions about experience with the costs, yeah.
Where does the cooperation of the co-ops, I mean, like, what's the vision for that?
So from my standpoint, and I work at the Co-op Development Center at UAA. You know, when you look at the three co-ops, they're all operating in communities where they're pretty big challenge. Sitka and transportation is just as well, even for Fairbanks, transportation is a huge issue. And you're dealing with competitors who are big multinational companies. I mean, AC Store, Canadian, you know, Hudson Bay company. Walmart, I mean, doesn't get any bigger than Walmart. And Fairbanks, you've got, you know, Costco and Safeway and Kroger's. And so from my perspective, I'm looking at like, well, we can get these guys to work together and to share things like that. All three co-ops have been, or the Fairbanks co-op has been buying canned salmon through the Kodiak co-op. They've been trying to share information about things like Sitka's direct purchasing of macadamia nuts and pecans, because that'll drop prices. And then sharing ideas of like, how do you operate in that market so that they all face the same kind of competitors? How do you kind of find the niche in your market when you're competing against those competitors? But maybe the co-op guys have kind of a better idea of kind of what the cooperation between co-ops.
Yeah, technical assistance, that's thinking, like, are you doing what's working, what's not, how did you get the products, who's looking at the products, how are you managing and challenging that, trying to have an open store for people, you know, managing their costs, that's been the big, that's kind of having a business network.
As a flower co-op, I can speak to some challenges we've had with regards to working in competition. And that may be affecting the co-ops across the state eventually. They're in the state of Alaska is changing goals. So that we have a business, each owner is considered an employee. And so our workers' comp policy went from $1,350 to $13,050 for 2023. We pushed pretty hard. We had to reorganize the activities just to get a policy in place. But I don't know how the Sitka group is getting away with having so many members and hasn't been flagged yet. But I just raised that maybe that's something we can cooperate among co-ops and actually states. Have an exemption for agricultural businesses in the state that not be under that.
We like, because we like to buy. We have floated the idea. We had floated the idea since we were in the trucking company of like all of the co-ops and all of the natural ag producers and everything, they all buy a truck together, and we would even help initiate such a thing. And then they all get the same pricing on a truck for less, for buying like pieces of the truck. And you start the process by figuring out what the customers actually want right now and where you're getting it from. You don't have the same logistics costs. And then you work with the local agriculture to substitute one thing at a time with something grown local. And we had floated that for a while, and a bunch of people, especially when we found out the prices, were like, oh, that's a great idea. But then it's like, okay, so you guys just get a hold of each other, and that's kind of where it died. It was like cats, right? But the thing is now that I'm here, I realize that there's like 10 times as many different agricultural interests that would be all about it, that we didn't even know to ask, and some were a lot further along with the process and so on. But then another thing is when it comes to sourcing, like you were saying, where I mean, these guys can get this and these guys can get this. If you had a route that went all the way to one and then went all the way back to the other, and you just find somebody who moves a lot of freight to eat up the lion's share of the cost as a percentage, right? So grain producers would be a really good one. I mean, feed grain producers, they've already helped a whole bunch of other local food producers. We work with a couple of people who do grain, where they will find a customer that buys a whole truck. And we'll give them the price for the whole truck, but he'll let us hold off on the number of pallets that somebody else needs. And then pick them up on the next truck. So you're able to get the pallet prices that a Walmart would get, actually probably better, for the same price, but at a lower volume. And that worked great for a lot of these guys. But the thing is the producers figured it out right away because their margins were tiny, what choice do they have, right? But it's the vendors have actually, you know, whether it be like the co-ops or whatever, with a couple of notable exceptions, we're all about it. But it seems like the vendors are not taking of that opportunity. But then I go to these conferences and I'm not trying to hate on you guys. I really do love you, I swear. But like the thing is then they'll say, oh, you know, the cost of logistics are really hard, you know, the difficulty of sourcing and so on. But like, we actually already work with people who have working models that have solved this problem already. And if anybody wants help with that, we advise for free, right? Like, come on over. It will not increase your logistics costs. You know?
Well, that might be an interesting thing to include in, we do a monthly call with the co-op manager.
If you want me to do happy to, even if it's just for like 5 minutes, I'd be happy to tell you that we already do. In fact, I asked the permission of all of the local producers and vendors that we already work with, if I could mention what we're doing, because you always worry about like guarding your secrets or whatever, but all of them are totally telling you like what worked for them. And the thing is all of those people stand to gain tremendously. Like Chase, like some of our trailers, they're a third full or like a quarter full, and we're still cutting their logistics prices in half, right? Or less, actually a lot less sometimes. But if other people wanted to get on board, it would actually drive down the cost of doing it too. So I'd be more than happy to help. And one of the things that I was sharing with you earlier about like, we've solved problems with, for example, Juneau, you know, like getting rid of barge prices and switching to like ferry prices with trucks that are stuff like that. Like, you know, sometimes there's an adventure in just doing the challenge, right? But we've actually solved the remote food problem before. Like refrigerated trucking is what we actually do. And another thing is a lot of these bigger guys that people are like, oh, well, they can do it, you know, faster. You would not believe how many of them are using us when they're like, we don't know how to get there, or we don't know how to, you know. So you would literally have the same company that a lot of them are already using, but without the price tag.
And then,
Anybody can go there at least once in a while, and it would. We know how much is available to be done in Homer and how expensive it's been in Homer. And I have made many calls before to try to tackle that problem, but it was always an issue of like, well, I mean, this works for us, and how would we get this, and how would we get that? It's like, I mean, I'll talk to anybody who needs talked to. It would behoove people to be like, let's all get a truck together, because the way lower times you wouldn't be talking about like stuff sitting on the docket, you know, that just came off the barge for 5 years. It would be like, all right, barge is getting unloaded, your trailer is waiting to go, right? Like it comes off the barge, and then local stuff, it's even better.
In fact, our turnaround times from Delta to Kenai are shorter than from barge to Anchorage. Like, we literally load it as it's produced and we can still get it to Kenai. They can come off the barge and then to a distribution center and then to our trailers. Right, like, I'm not even kidding, we can literally make it from Delta to Kenai faster than they can get stuff off the boats.
Seems like some. Possibly continue. Transportation is a big issue. Not only for food costs, but also the food.
Yeah, it's, I reached out to a bunch of the things for people already, but there's so many of them, I had no idea. But love to help with that too. But we do a lot of stuff in the area. It's in the summer, we go to Anchorage like every week at least. So, and the other thing is the these farmers could help a lot of these food producers a lot with the freight sharing that drives the cost down and so on. Or a lot of you guys could have a role to play in like pre-aggregating. And, you know, it's just something that maybe is easier to load or, you know.
We provide that service around like. One of the ones that include that comes out every other week. But, you know, that was a volume. Chart and stuff.
Load, that's not-
Where palette and. But we should talk. It's very different. Affordable solutions. But, and then.
Yeah. With very food safe. I mean, I guess the flat, there's the equipment trailer, we didn't know, so.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much. You guys are welcome to hang out. There's no more sessions, no more session after this, but I'm gonna go ahead and shut us off here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Alaska National